welcome back to my channel. My name is Emily and this is the Astral Library. And happy Valentine's Day, or almost Valentine's Day. It is Valentine's week when this video comes out, so I thought why not wear some nice red lipstick, have a nice Valentine-y shirt, and give you guys a list of my top recommendations of Black authors since February is also Black History Month. And even though I don't necessarily have a TBR set for this month, I want to promote Black authors and Black voices and Black stories on this channel as much as possible. So I thought, what better way to do that than to give you guys a list of recommendations of books I've either read and have given 4 or 5 stars myself, a list of literary classics that I've studied and love and I think are so important to our kind of conception of literature, and to top it all off, I want to give you guys a recommendation of Black authors and Black stories that I have not personally read yet, but I am very excited to get to. So let's go ahead and jump straight in. I have my giant stacks of books with me, just a little bit off camera. So we're gonna go from the top to bottom. And to start this list of recommendations off, we are going to be in our literary classic category. And the first book I have here, you can see my tabs in it from the various times I've studied this book, but this book is Passing by Nella Larsen. So Nella Larsen's Passing follows 2 characters, Claire and Irene, who were best friends growing up. And we are joining them together many years into their adulthood when they both are married and have children, and they're reuniting. The thing between them is that Claire and Irene are both what we would have called mulatto characters or mixed race characters. And so this is a story that is playing on the tragic mulatto trope. And we are following 2 girls who are both passing, but one, Claire, passes off as white for the majority of her life. And as she's now reconnecting with Irene, who is very proud of her Black heritage, is trying to reconnect with her community, and Irene is very upset and feels offended by Claire trying to do so after she shunned her Blackness and her Black community for so long. This is a book that has you screaming by the end of it because neither Claire nor Irene are very likable characters. And Nella Larsen's making quite a pointed commentary by playing with this tragic mulatto character and trying to paint this picture of high Black society through the lens of Irene, who we would definitely consider a socialite. But Irene herself is a hypocrite because she too can pass and has passed in order to get some comfort that she believes she deserves. This is such a compelling story, and it's not long at all. And like I said, this ending will leave you screaming. If you have read this book, you know exactly what I'm talking about in the ending. And if you haven't read this book, please pick it up and let me know in the comments what your reaction is to the ending. Because when I first read this during my undergrad, I was just flabbergasted. I was like, that's the end of the book? That happened? And just like the theories I had still haunt me to this day. This book I constantly come back to and write in my academic career because it's just that thought-provoking and it's just that intriguing and fun. And again, it's not that long of a book, so it's a very quick read. So the next book I have is Autobiography of an Ex-Colored Man by James Weldon Johnson. So this is another book that actually deals with passing as a central theme throughout the novel. Unlike Nella Larsen, we are only following one character, a man, an unnamed narrator, mind you, who is going through his life just kind of trying to tell his experience, and he has never necessarily considered himself Black or colored in his terminology. And he is this man who loves music, and he is traveling the world and experiencing so many different cultures and people who automatically assume he is white, even though he has never considered himself white, nor does he consider himself Black. He is just a person who is going through and playing this lovely music. And we are following him as, I want to say, about a teenager until his adulthood, as he's kind of traveling throughout the US and I believe a little bit in Europe, encountering different people of the working class, of upper society. And it's not until he encounters or how Black people are treated in the South. So this book was actually originally published in 1912 and republished in the 1920s at the kind of height of the Harlem Renaissance, where James Weldon Johnson actually attached the story to his name because it received a lot of backlash because of how brutally and how honestly it depicts the Black experience in the South and how Black people are treated at face value. And we're following a narrator who is a Black man, but is of a lighter complexion enough where he is being perceived as white, and he gets to see this, and he gets to see how he is treated if his secret is ever found out. It is another really short read, and sometimes a brutally honest and hard read, but it's such a great story, and I really, really enjoyed how James Weldon Johnson not only weaves music into the story through his character, but also very pointedly makes a comment on how Blackness is this weird thing that is only attributed to skin, but even at that level, it's not true. Because we have a Black man whose skin is light enough to be considered white, and yet if they were to ever find out he was Black, he would be brutalized. We have another Harlem Renaissance, because you could see my field of study, as well as just like the books I tend to enjoy are, surrounding the Harlem Renaissance era. And this book is no exception, and that is Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. Like the crown jewel of the Harlem Renaissance, in my opinion. I love this book so much. I own multiple copies of it. This is my pretty one that I don't ever mark up. It has to stay in the pristine. And this, I believe, is the 75th anniversary edition too. In this book, we are following Janie and her life as a child all the way to her adulthood. And we are particularly following her 3 relationships that she has throughout the books with her 3 different husbands. How in those marriages, Janie is learning more and more about herself, particularly how she defines herself even outside the relationship with a man. Zora Neale Hurston has such a way with writing. In her field of studies, Zora Neale Hurston was an anthropologist, and she just loved studying people, and she was captivated by her Blackness and Black communities and Black art and Black speaking. So she kind of conveys that in this story where we have Black vernacular at the forefront. This is what my friend called a speaking text. And I think that's the perfect term to define and view this book, because this is definitely a story that you should listen to. So if you're an audiobook person, this would be a great one, because the words take on a new life and meaning when you hear them out loud. At times, this book is written with a phonetic Black vernacular. Overall, I really love this story. I think it's a great, great piece that still stands the test of time, because even though we definitely get to see Janie's life through her marriages, and that's how it's kind of categorized throughout this book, this is very much a feminist text that is looking at Black female empowerment outside and within relationships, and the choice to make these relationships, because we are seeing Janie, particularly with her 3rd husband, Tea Cake, choose someone for herself, regardless of what society, her grandmother, or anyone else thinks about it. She is unapologetically Janie, and I love that. She's a great protagonist to read the story through. Okay, couple more classic-y books. This one's more a newer classic, and that is Citizen by Claudine Rankine. It took the world by storm when it was published in 2014, and that's for good reason. Because Claudine Rankine pulls no punches with this collection of poetry and story and articles that focus on real life. This is a book I'm going to read the back of because I think it's so important. You take in things you don't want all the time. The second you hear or see some ordinary moment, all its intended targets, all the meanings behind the retreating seconds, as far as you are able to see, come into focus. Hold up. Did you just hear? Did you just say? Did you just see? Did you just do that? Then the voice in your head silently tells you to take your foot off your throat, because just getting along shouldn't be an ambition. This is a great book. I loved every second of it. And just the way in which Claudine is able to take these moments and really bring into stark relief just what it means to be Black in America and the issues and prejudice and racism that is rampant in our modern society. All the other books you can kind of write off if you so chose. Oh, they're published in the 1920s and 1930s. They're not relevant now. This is published in 2014. This takes real moments from that time period that is still very much relevant to our society. Not only is it short in length, but the pieces themselves are short. Like I said, it is a combination of poetry and short stories and even pictures. So highly, highly recommend. All right. And the last one for the classic/literary category is Sula by Toni Morrison. Now, Toni Morrison is just a name. You know her name. And there are so many books I could choose, from The Bluest Eye to Beloved, but one of my favorite texts from Toni Morrison is Sula, which actually reminds me a lot of Passing by Nella Larsen, in that we are still following two little Black girls who have the ability to pass, who also have this pride surrounding their Blackness, and surrounding their Black community. I cannot tell you how much I love Sula, and particularly the character Sula. So this is a story about two friends who grow up in the Bottoms, which is this small little Black community that lives on the top of the hill. And we're following them as they were really close friends as children, have some sort of breaking in the relationship, and rejoin them many years later as they're adults as they kind of reconnect with each other. And Sula, our kind of title character, is very odd, to say the least. She is amazing. She's such a wild child, and honestly probably a controversial character, but I just love her so much because she's very unapologetic in how she views and acts and portrays herself, despite what people, even like her best friend, think of her. She is always gonna be who she is, no matter what anyone else says and how anyone else views her actions. This is another book where the ending kind of surprised me, not as much as Passing, but still quite a lot. And this is definitely a book that lingers with me. Of all of Toni Morrison's work, this is the one I think that stands out the most in my mind. All right, but let's say that literary classics are not for you. You like more contemporary stuff, you like a little more fantasy. Well, let me go ahead and show you my kind of more contemporary slash fantasy slash recent reads from Black authors that feature Black main characters and Black stories. And the very first one I have is a classic, I want to say, in its own right. And that is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. I love this book. I want to teach this book next quarter. This is how much I love this book. I cannot put to you in words how important I think reading this book is as a young teen, as an adult, as someone who wants to understand what it's like to be Black in America. This is a book to read. In this book, we are following our main character, Star, whose father is a former gang member and her mother works at the hospital, and she herself is kind of split between two worlds. She lives in a poor Black community, but she goes to school in a very affluent, white, kind of private school. And we are following in her two different lives as she is existing in this all-white space, but also going back home to her Black community, her Black roots, and the dangers that kind of go with living in a poor neighborhood. One day, though, Star is at a party with some friends, and she ends up reuniting with one of her dearest childhood friends. While they're at the party, someone pulls a gun, and they're all leaving. And then as her and her friend are driving home, they get pulled over by the police, and her friend is unfortunately killed. And Star is the only witness to what happened. What happens afterwards is that the case is found out by the media and it completely blows up as they are trying to paint her friend as a gang member himself and justifying the police's action in killing him, even though the fact that her friend was completely unarmed. This is a story that is really hard because it is unapologetic in how realistically it paints this image of police brutality and the aftermath and how media treats these stories. I cried while reading this. I cried while watching the movie, and I still think, and it just touched me in a way that I thought was so profound and did such a good job of depicting not only the fear, but the fight and the power and the empowerment that comes with saying your voice in spite of all the things that are kind of trying to put you down. And we get to witness as Star does that for herself, that she discovers who she is despite living in two worlds and how to mend those two identities to become her truest identity and self. This is a 5-star read. It's so good. It's so quick to read. It's emotional. It's happy. It's funny. I cannot recommend this book enough. If you pick up any book on this list, please pick up The Hate You Give. But let's say, Emily, I can't do contemporary. I can't do some of those heavier topics, those real life. I need to escape life a little bit. Well then, may I introduce you to Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. So you're not gonna be able to escape everything because this is Black History Month and you can't ignore the Black suffering that happens in real life. But to get you a bit of escapism, Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. Oh my God. How do I describe Legendborn? Legendborn is a legend in itself. It's a darling here on BookTube and on Book Talk and on Bookstagram, on everywhere, because it's just that good. This is a book that is super hyped and it lives up to the hype. I promise you, it lives up to the hype, especially when it comes to its sequel, Bloodmarked. Ugh. So this is a series of books. So there are currently 2 books out, but there's going to be 4 books in total, which I'm very excited because it was originally a trilogy. So we got another book announced, which was great. So in this book, we are following Bree, a 16-year-old who is going to this kind of advanced program at a prestigious white university that has a very deep history. And on one of her first nights there, she encounters a monster. But what's more than that, she encounters a group of students fighting against that monster with magic. But the twist is not that magic exists, is that Bree has seen this magic before on the night her mother died. And now Bree starts investigating who are these people and how do they potentially connect to her mother's death? What did they maybe have to do with it? Was she fighting these monsters? What is going on? And as Bree starts digging deeper into this society, she finds out that they are actually a secret clan of people who are reborn from the Arthurian Round Table. So King Arthur and all his knights, and they are the only force standing between monsters and creatures and the natural world. So their whole destiny is to fight against that evil. And Bree finds herself embroiled in that quest, especially as she starts falling in love with the scion of King Arthur himself. Oh, this book's so good. There's so much I would love to tell you about this book that I cannot tell you because it spoils this book. This book lives up to the hype. Every second of this book was so good. And it's such a great escape while also still staying very connected to Bree's Black root and the Black experience, because we get to see what it is like to be Black at a prestigious university and in academia that is, even though it may be prestigious in some ways, is still very flawed and holds a lot of prejudice to Bree and people who look like Bree. This book is so good on so many different levels. Not only is it a really good fantasy book, but it's a really good Black story. I cannot thank Tracy Deonn enough for writing this book. There's Black magic, there's Black characters, there's a ton of different Black casts. Read this book. Read it. It's so good. I promise you won't regret it. You might be like, Emily, I don't really want to do fantasy. Fantasy is not like really my genre. Well, can I interest you in a sci-fi? This book you've seen me talk about on the channel before. It was one of my favorite reads of last year, and that is Chain Gang All-Stars by Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah. This book is sci-fi. And oh my god. I love this book. I love this book so much. I love Adjei-Brenyah's work, period. I first encountered him with his release of his short stories, Friday Black, which is just chef's kiss, so good. So when I heard that he was releasing a full-length novel and a sci-fi novel at that, I said, sign me up, let me get it. And oh my god, I was not disappointed. I'm speechless. I don't know how to talk about this book. This book has so much going on in it. So in this book, we are set in a so distant future where the prison system has been completely privatized. As a result of it, the system has changed from how we view it today. If you've ever seen the movie Death Race, where like with Jason Statham, where he's like in prison and they start like racing cars and like killing each other, it's like that, but more Hunger Games and more like brutal fighting with sci-fi kind of weapons involved. In this system, prisoners who are sent on death row have a chance to fight for their freedom, where they're put in sometimes one-on-one matches, sometimes two-on-two matches, sometimes chain gang on chain gang matches, which is like a group of people who are linked together and travel throughout the circuit for their matches. And they all fight to each other to the brutal death. And that event is televised and treated almost like a sport. And in particular, we are following Loretta Thurwar and Hermara Stacker, the two topmost fighters of this deathmatch league. And Loretta in particular is 1 or 2 matches away from winning true freedom, or winning her like 100th or so match that if she wins, she will be set free. But no one has ever achieved true freedom before. And instead, they are usually killed off. So if Loretta is to win her match, she would be the first ever in history. And of course, the people in charge would do anything to stop her from doing so. This book is so complex, because not only does it offer a commentary on our current prison system here in the US, but it is really taking a look at the history of imprisonment, and particularly the history of imprisonment of Black people. And looking at that through this sci-fi lens just shows you the horror that is prevalent in our system and where we are headed, because prison systems are becoming more and more privatized, and how we are viewing and treating prisoners is horrific. I cannot tell you how important this book is for that alone, but the way Adjei-Brenyah really paints the story and how it drives you forward is so so compelling. It is the horror of our society and how even when we look away, we can't. This book will call you out for looking away. But it does make this book a rough read. I will tell you that it is not an easy book to get through, but it is such a good one. And I still highly, highly recommend it. Not only to learn a little bit more about the prison system, even though this is a sci-fi system, we are using hard facts from our prison system in the US. And bonus, it is sapphic. We are following 2 sapphic women of color as our main leads in the story. Do make sure you look up the trigger warnings for this book because it is unapologetically brutal, and I want you all to be safe. But again, another highly recommended read. All right, we've reached the section where we are going to be entering books of authors that I have not read personally, but I hope to get to very soon. So instead of trying to explain them myself, I'm going to be reading the synopsis so I can portray them in the best way possible for you guys. And the first I have is A Song Below Water by Bethany C. Morrow. So this book drew me not only because it's beautiful cover that we get to see black faces. I love to see black illustrations on books. I feel it's something we don't have enough of, and these women are gorgeous. But I had this book recommended to me because water plays such a huge role in African mythology and lore that one of my professors who studies like mermaids, and particularly mermaids and their connection to Black literature, read this book and loved it. So let's go ahead and read the synopsis together. In a society determined to keep her under lock and key, Tavia must hide her siren powers. Meanwhile, Effie is fighting her own family struggles as she is pitted against literal demons from her past. Together, these best friends must navigate the perils of high school's junior year. But everything changes in the aftermath of a siren murder trial that rocks the nation, when Tavia accidentally lets out her magical voice at the worst possible moment. Soon, nothing in Portland, Oregon seems safe. To save themselves from drowning, Tavia and Effie's unbreakable sisterhood must be the strongest magic of all. Bit of a YA read, but still sounds super intriguing. I love a good siren character. I feel like we don't see enough sirens in fantasy, and I think that's a crime. We should get more sirens, and particularly we should get more black sirens and mermaids. Just saying. And then up next, I have The Poison Heart by Kalynn Bayron. But from what I remember and understand, this deals a lot with like black earth magic, and plants take a really big kind of a role in this, not only from the cover alone, but just in the series in general. And that I believe our main character comes from a family of witches. Brias has a gift with a single touch. She can grow plants from tiny seeds to rich blooms. When Brias's aunt dies and wills her a dilapidated estate in rural New York, Bria and her parents hope that surrounded by plants and flowers, she will finally learn to control her gift. But their new home is sinister in ways they never expected. It comes with a mysterious set of instructions, a walled garden filled with the deadliest botanicals in the world, and generations of secrets. There is more to Bria's sudden inheritance than she could have imagined, and she is determined to uncover it. Okay, so it sounds like this is going to be like an atmospheric, black, kind of like spooky manor, spooky haunted house situation, or at least a house filled with secrets, and that's a vibe. That's like a fall vibe. And one thing to know is that this is the same author of Cinderella is Dead. So if you were a big fan of that, I would highly recommend picking up this book because I hear a lot of great things about that series and about this series too. The next book I have is another beloved book here on BookTube, and that is Dread Nation by Justine Ireland. So I've had this book on my TBR for quite a while, and I just haven't had a chance to get to it, but I hear nothing but great things about Justine Ireland's writing in particular, but this book especially, I hear a lot of great things, and I believe this book is sapphic, if I'm not mistaken. So let's go ahead and read the synopsis. Jane McKean was born 2 days before the dead began to walk the battlefields of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, derailing the war between the states and changing the nation forever. In this new America, safety for all depends on the work of a few, and laws like the Negro and Native Reduction Act require certain children attend combat schools to learn to put down the dead. But there are also opportunities, and Jane is studying to become an attendant, trained in both weaponry and etiquette to protect well-to-do. It's a chance for a better life for Negro girls like Jane, but that's not a life she wants. Almost finished with her education at Miss Preston's School of Combat in Baltimore, Jane is set on returning to her Kentucky home and doesn't pay much mind to the politics of the eastern cities with their talk of returning America to the glory of its days before the dead rose. But when families around Baltimore County begin to go missing, Jane is caught in the middle of a desperate fight against some powerful enemies. And the restless dead, it would seem, are the least of her problems. So we got a zombie book. I don't read a lot of zombie literature. And I think that's one of the reasons why I picked this up, because I am a huge like zombie movie fan. But to get to see zombies in civil war and racism and probably this character kicking ass and taking names, I'm all here for it. And I hope if you're looking for like an action adventure story, I think this would definitely fill that niche. All right, and the very last book I have is Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. So S.A. Cosby is someone I've been hearing more and more about lately. And this is the first book that I remember encountering that just super intrigued me and made me want to pick it up. So let's go ahead and read the synopsis together. A black father, a white father, 2 dead sons, a quest for revenge and redemption. Ike Randolph has been out of jail for 15 years, with not so much as a speeding ticket in all that time. But a black man with the cops at the door knows to be afraid. The last thing he expects to hear is that his son Isaiah has been murdered, along with Isaiah's white husband, Derek. Ike has never fully accepted his son, but is devastated by his loss. Derek's father, Buddy Lee, was almost as ashamed of Derek for being gay as Derek was ashamed for his father's criminal record. Buddy Lee still has contacts in the underworld though, and he wants to know who killed his boy. Ike and Buddy Lee, 2 ex-cons with little in common other than a criminal past and a love for their dead sons, band together in their desperate desire for revenge. In their quest to do better for their sons in death than they did in life, these hardened men will confront their own prejudices about their son and each other as they rain down vengeance upon those who hurt their boys. What really drew me to this book and to this story is that we are following older characters, and we are following characters who are not perfect by their own admission. We have Ike, who is admittedly homophobic, and we have Buddy, who is also homophobic but also is hinted at being racist. And so not only do we get to follow these older characters, realize their flaws and confront their flaws, but also go on a revenge story. Like, come on, who doesn't love a good revenge story? I know I do. And I want to see I want to root for these characters to win and get their revenge while also learning how to be better people and to get over their prejudice against each other and what they had against their sons. I hope there's a happy ending for them. I don't know. Sounds like it's going to be such a great book. And I've heard that S.A. Cosby's writing is so engaging and so fun, and that the way he weaves his words together to tell the story is so like intriguing, and so I'm here for it. And this is another black story by a black author, and I think one of the few black male authors on this list. But that is all the books I have for you guys. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope you guys found some great books to read for Black History Month, or just do pick up for your TBR. Just because Black History Month is in February doesn't mean that's the only time you should read or reach for black authors. All of these stories sound amazing or are amazing, and I highly recommend each and every one of them. And of course, if you've read any of these books before and you are desperate for me to read them again or to read them for the first time, leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you enjoyed about them or which ones you maybe would want to pick up for yourself. But that is it for me. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you stick around and grow this little book community with me. But otherwise, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!